From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and yes, we're back. We are back in the barn, and more blather coming your way.
But before we dive into the blather, please download our app. Get
Called
that app.
Blather TV.
GilbertHouse.org/app. That's where you find it, which gets you all of our content and guarantees we don't get canceled because it bypasses the gatekeepers. All the content on the app comes directly from that Christian company, Subsplash, that hosts the app, develops the app, and they have been absolutely wonderful to work with.
Absolutely. By the way, Grace and Glory said that if we don't give them enough snacks, they will report us to Subsplash, and they're going to get us canceled.
I don't think that's how that works. Pretty sure.
Well, and Glory said, if you ever come at me again with that little grinding tool.
Yeah, she was
didn't
with
like that.
The groomer yesterday. I take him to the groomer on my way to visit my mother
every
Friday, so that they're excited about going to see Miss Eileen and
Aunt Eileen. Practically, she's family to them,
right? And Mona, she's got a little pack of rescue dogs. They're Mona and Luke, who's near deaf and nearly blind.
I know, he's such a sweet boy. Mona looks like a bigger version of Glory.
Right.
Bigger, more muscular. Maybe she'll look like that one day. Don't know. She's almost 10 months old, though. So,
yeah. But yesterday, Eileen was going to use the little Dremel grinding tool to take down the points
sharpness
on her,
of the clipped teeth.
Oh, man.
Clipped nails. Yeah, I'll tell you what. When you get to be older, we've talked about this before, or I have really, really thin skin on my forearms.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of my body's not too bad, but the forearms, man, and my hands. And when she just comes over and wants my attention,
right,
suddenly I've got this major gash. So we're trying, Derek and I are both trying to train them to use nose boops.
Yeah. Bump me with your nose if you need my attention.
Boop. And we'll go up and we'll boop their nose, and then we'll give them lots of attention. Boop it again, give them lots of attention. Slowly is getting to replace, and they don't jump up as much anymore. But when they do, it could be me, it could be another person.
Right. Eileen
says she has issues with it with her dogs. Sometimes she has to really bandage up her forearms.
Yeah. But apparently when she came at Glory with the Dremel grinding tool yesterday, Glory reacted like she was being probed by aliens.
I'm not having it. Yeah. We're not doing that.
Grace was fine.
Oh, yeah.
Grace, she said, handled it without any trouble. She's just very calm, very sedate, which is Grace's normal temperament anyway.
She is a sweet, gentle girl. So is Glory, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's just she's still a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
She is still learning. So, yes, to get back to it, I'm only joking. They would never turn us in. They love being part of the ministry.
Yeah, and Glory's still exploring and finding ways to use her teeth. We came back. What were we doing out here the other day?
Last week, I think. I don't know.
Anyway, we're here in the barn, and they were in the backyard because the weather here is very pleasant right now.
Mild.
Came back into the backyard and found the cover on the grill, the charcoal grill. The cover that protects it all winter long had been shredded. There were pieces of grill cover all over the backyard.
Well, I think Glory had figured out, look, this cover needs to be replaced. This is just too old.
Yeah.
If I can shred it, then it's too old.
In her mind, it was just another game like the weed block that she's been. It could be. But in her mind, it was probably like the weed block that she's been pulling up.
She loves doing
the weed block fabric that's underneath.
And she'll take a bit of fabric and she'll run with it like it's a flag that she's captured.
Yes. Victory. So anyway, well, yeah, dogs are wonder. And if you're a cat owner and you love your cats, we appreciate that too. These are created by the Lord to just make life a joy. And
you can't get mad at them.
No.
You say no.
They're just doing what they do.
You say no. So she knows what the word no means. She kind of, I'm sorry. But look, we don't get mad.
Yeah. There's no point to it. There's no point. It doesn't serve any productive purpose. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us today.
She has a great stick right now.
She does.
Oh, yeah. She does. She found a really great stick. It's about a foot long. She's just enjoying that.
Yeah, we've got the volunteer sunflowers in the backyard, front yard from the feeding of the birds. And when they dry out, Glory will go out there and say, oh, hey, this one's ready to come out. And she'll yank it out and then she'll run around the yard with a great stick.
I know. She's so funny. But anyway, yes, they have become part of our ministry. So download the app.
Yes, please. GilbertHouse.org/app or PIDRadio.com/app. Either way. And you'll notice, by the way, if you get the app or Roku, Apple TV, now on Fire TV as well. So you can find it in the Amazon Fire TV store. Bible's Greatest Mysteries is now in there.
Ooh. do. I love those shows.
Including
I loved doing those.
All 28 previous episodes. So there's a bit of a hiatus there between the last episodes, which were October of spring of 23, spring of 22.
We had some great guests.
Yeah, we did. Dr. Mike Heiser were the last 4 episodes that we aired before the show went on hiatus. So Carl Gallups is back this week's episode, and they will be released on Friday mornings, 9 a.m. We got a wonderful response from somebody who said, "No fair, we want Sci Friday too." Well, so do we, but there's only so many hours in the week for video editing.
We can put the old ones up.
They're still out there.
Oh, we'll see.
The Sci Friday YouTube channel is still out there.
The oldest ones are not available.
True. That is true. But a lot of the Sci Friday episodes are on the app. So you can get those. Again, not the very oldest ones, but I think quite a few of them.
The oldest ones are.
We had 300 episodes of Sci Friday.
Yeah. Well, you and I, once we commit to doing something, we try to keep doing it.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, we are going to hit you over the head with this again and again.
We're up to 261 on Unraveling Revelation. So, we consistency is a big part of life. If you're going to do something, do it and do it consistently. If it's not working, admit it. Don't keep beating your head against a wall. But anyway.
Do we have Armored Sheep up there yet?
Armored Sheep will go up this week. I rendered the first episode.
Oh, good.
And I'll show you what it looks like.
And again, we'll warn you.
We're still tweaking.
No makeup. Derek wears no makeup. Oh, sorry. It is me. No makeup, though.
Yeah.
My eyes just can't take wearing makeup much. They're getting better, though.
But very good content in that first episode, though.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we've got
so much to talk about.
Well, yeah, we really should dive in here since we've already blathered for 7 minutes.
Only 7?
Yeah, a lot going on this week, both with Israel and here in the United States. And let's start with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. I've admitted that when I was talking about when I was preparing the 5 and 10 updates for Skywatch TV week before last, and Hurricane Helene flared up in the Gulf of Mexico and then hit Florida that Thursday night, Friday morning. I didn't talk about Helene at all. And I really dropped the ball on that because Helene hit the Big Bend area of Florida as the most powerful hurricane ever to make landfall there. And then it traveled up through South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. And there are areas there that were just absolutely flattened.
I do want to say that we are all praying for every one of you, whether you are directly involved in that you live in the area and you may or may not have lost property, in some cases, friends and family. But if you live elsewhere and you have loved ones who are in that danger zone, we'll just call it that, we know that it isn't just the aftermath itself as in the damage. It's the psychological damage.
Oh, yeah.
And the financial damage, and the fact that the government doesn't seem to want to help you at all.
Well, yeah. There are a number of, I'll use the term, conspiracy theories that are floating around on the web. We wear tinfoil hats. I mean, we acknowledge that the official story is almost always not truth. That no matter what, I mean, from the origins of World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, the stories that we've been told were not true. 9/11, whatever the truth is, Building 7. Okay. But if we can't corroborate something from a reliable source, we'll try not to engage in fear-mongering or spreading theories. So, was this storm artificially created? I don't think so. I mean, we look back over history and we see devastating storms like this that have occurred within written history for the last century or more.
Let me just bring this up for those of you who don't, well, you're not crazy like I am and you just love to dig in and get old historic facts. The year 1900, the Galveston hurricane.
That's exactly the one I was thinking of.
As many as 12,000 people died.
12,000.
From storm surge.
Yeah.
And it not only brought disaster immediately, it also brought long-term damage. And as I said a few minutes ago, not just psychological, but economic, because the oil industry was based in Galveston. It moved to Houston after that because investors said, we can't trust Galveston.
Yeah.
Even though Galveston put up major seawalls and all sorts of protection to make it never to ensure it didn't happen again.
Right. If you got millions and today's money, that'd be billions to invest. Would you put it right there on the coast again? If you might lose it.
Well, Houston's on the coast. It's just that Galveston's sort of an island, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So it's more exposed.
Like a barrier island.
Understandable. Understandable. So yeah, the infrastructure was smashed and all of the businesses, well, look, we can rebuild here and maybe have it happen again, or we can move a little bit inland to Houston. So yeah, Houston and the Houston-Beaumont area, a major oil center. So the death toll, the last time I checked, is probably higher now because they're still getting to areas that have been inaccessible for more than a week in western North Carolina. It was 202 the last time I checked. It's probably higher than that now. But again, Galveston, 1,900, 12,000. Now, they didn't have social media and the internet back then where you could look at the National Hurricane Center's website and get the latest radar updates and know that you needed to get out of the way.
Right.
All they knew was that, hey, it's getting cloudy out there. Oh, well, probably in for a bit of a storm. They didn't,
because I'm sure that they were accustomed to big storms coming through.
Right. I mean, European settlers had been occupying that part of Texas for probably half a century by that point. So, yeah, they'd certainly run into that prior to the 1900 hurricane. So was this HAARP, which is the array in Alaska that is alleged to have the power to manipulate weather? We don't see any evidence of that, and I don't see who benefits from the kind of storm that's been that hit last week. There are those who claim that it was to exercise eminent domain and then get access to lithium deposits supposedly in that area. The main lithium deposits in the United States are in Nevada.
Yeah.
Not in Western North Carolina. And we're fourth in the world in terms of lithium. Bolivia.
Africa has tons.
Africa has tons, but Bolivia is the world's leading source of lithium.
Yes.
So that doesn't seem to hold true. I had talked on 5 and 10 based on a story that Zero Hedge reported. They cited a report from earlier this year by a professor at the Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania, that 2 mines, quartz mines in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, which was absolutely cut off from the world, were the only source of ultra pure quartz used to make the crucibles that are used to make silicon wafers, which are absolutely essential to to making microprocessors, computer chips, and solar panels, both of which are growth industries right now with artificial intelligence booming and solar panels, thanks to the green energy cult. Those are areas that are really a good place if you're going to invest your money, invest it in companies that are making microprocessors. But was listening to the No Agenda podcast this morning. John C. Dvorak co-hosts with Adam Curry. And we've got to say, they've been doing a great job of deconstructing the news for almost as long as we've been doing PID radio.
In fact, Adam Curry helped come up with the code.
Yes, the XML code that is used to syndicate podcasts. But Adam, we've got a fraction of the following of Curry and Dvorak, but we've been doing it longer. PID radio is older than No Agenda. Anyway, John C. Dvorak is a longtime tech writer and analyst and investor. He's got a very interesting backstory, lots of experience in various industries, including oil. But he pointed out that the story about the quartz mine is not, in fact, true. There are other sources of quartz that can be refined to the purity needed to make these crucibles. So the idea that somehow the government was directing the storm to devastate the area and then take control of lithium and ultra-pure quartz just really doesn't hold up if you know anything about that industry.
Well, and this is not the first time that FEMA has behaved counterproductively for the nation.
And that's the other thing. The George W. Bush administration got a lot of flack for FEMA's response to Hurricane Katrina back in 2004. This is Joe Biden and, by extension, Kamala Harris's Katrina. But the media isn't treating it the same way because, well, they're Democrats, and besides, we need to save democracy from Orange Man bad. Mm-hmm. The people on the ground, though, are seeing what's going on. We don't know because we're not there, and all we can do is try to sift through what's coming through on social media and news reports. And without the ability to corroborate, we've got to look at everything and say, well, okay, does this ring true? Not sure. What we can say is that at the very least, this administration is the most tone-deaf administration in history, where you've got in the span of a couple of days, as people in North Carolina, word is getting out that there are people absolutely cut off who have no power, no water, no food for days. There are people who are getting insulin delivered to them by people who are taking their personal drones and flying insulin to these spots that are cut off because the roads are washed out.
Gary Haven is there.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Gary Haven, founder of the Curves,
TV.
The Curves chain, friend of Skywatch TV, good friend of Timothy Alberino, and a licensed pilot. So no doubt flying things in. You've got the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, saying, if you are a private drone pilot, do not fly near the areas where we are conducting rescue operations because you may be prosecuted and arrested and prosecuted. Like, wait, what?
Okay, hold on. You don't want help because the military isn't there. Usually the National Guard goes in.
Right, but the National Guard is being held back. So, well, we might need you in the Middle East or maybe
Ukraine.
They
have been deployed.
They've been deployed.
The Middle East.
Okay, they've been sent out.
That's my understanding.
And a lot of these guys have family up in those areas and are furious, again, according to some accounts on social media.
Right.
Now, we understand the government and emergency responders not wanting people getting in the way and making things more complicated. But instead of saying, if you are operating in this area, we will arrest you and you may be prosecuted, say, hey, check in with the local FEMA office. Let's coordinate our efforts so we're not working at cross purposes. So we're not duplicating our efforts. Let's make this as efficient as we can. Britain managed to do this when they evacuated their soldiers from Dunkirk, okay? Was it 1939, 1940? And they mobilized a fleet of volunteers who had boats, fishing boats, private pleasure boats, whatever. Go to France, take soldiers on board, get them back to England. They managed to coordinate that. Here, instead of saying if you've got a private plane, a private helicopter, if you've got a drone that can fly long distances and bring supplies in, coordinate with us. No, he said you might get arrested. Like, what?
One of my favorite stories from this morning is that there is a team of mule drivers.
Yes.
That are riding in with supplies on their mules.
I saw that.
They apparently teach survival using mules, and they've taken their whole herd.
You can see why in the ancient world, mules and donkeys were valued more highly than horses.
And camels.
Well, but even camels weren't really used by the Amorites all that much. Amorites in the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yes, camels had been domesticated by Arabs by that point. But the Amorites, who lived further north in what is now Syria, Iraq, southern Turkey, Lebanon, they mainly used donkeys as pack animals for crossing the desert. Donkeys were highly prized, and apparently some of these areas are being reached by, as you say, mules and donkeys and guys carrying supplies on those animals.
Yeah, I remember down in my family's from eastern Kentucky, and many years ago I was visiting my half-brother, down there, and he was telling me the story of this road that, because if you live down there, you know how hilly it is. And it's almost helps if you've got one leg shorter than the other, because seriously, my dad used to tell me that the cattle, would always stand in a way that favors their short leg, because that's the only way they can stand on
Your dad had a good sense of humor.
He was so funny. Yeah. He also told me chocolate milk came from chocolate cows. And I believed it. But I know that's not true. But he was telling me about the establishment of some of those roads, and he said that he could remember as a boy that they would take mules through there. And that's how they laid out their old Indian trails, that they would widen with these mules dragging stuff to actually flatten and grade the path. Yes, thank you. And then eventually it was mechanized, but mules were the thing.
Right. Basically what's happened is Western North Carolina, around Asheville and that area there, Buncombe County, have been returned to the 19th century.
Mm-hmm. Well, sadly,
middle of the 19th
century.
century.
A hint of things to come.
Yeah.
By the way, when President Biden just suddenly appeared and said, I'm going to give a press conference, just before major networks were supposed to go live to Kamala Harris, he preempted her. He came in and stole all of her thunder and also threw her under the bus while he was at it. He was talking about, we sing from the same song sheet. As vice president, she's been interlocked with me. He essentially said she's been co-president with me. Everything that you want to give me credit for, she gets credit. But at the same time, he was implying, if you want to say, I take the blame, she takes the blame too. So don't claim that on day one in the Oval Office, Kamala, you're going to fix the world, because you had almost 4 years to do it and you haven't done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And her response, or lack of response, and as you say, tone deaf attitude, it speaks volumes. And I think that is going to affect the election.
I think so too. And certainly, certainly the Republican National Committee is looking at this and saying, thank you for the campaign ad, Mr. President.
And he even wore a MAGA hat. Well, a few days ago when he was getting ready to go on a plane and he says, I need that hat.
Yeah, this was at a union event and some guy was kind of trolling him with a MAGA hat and he put it on. So
whether or not he knew what he was doing, I know he really does.
No, there have been reports behind the scenes that Biden was very upset at being pushed out.
That's what I hear.
And that on the day he announced his decision to withdraw from the race, and then 30 minutes after that, he endorsed Harris. That was a slap at the Obamas, who wanted Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, former astronaut, Democratic senator, who's in a very a state that is becoming more Republican, even though there are quite a few migrants who have new arrivals, quote unquote, that have settled there. This was a slap at Obama because Obama wanted an open primary, which then later Nancy Pelosi said, well, we had an open primary and Harris won because nobody else wanted to jump in because they all knew please. Biden basically was, as you say, throwing Harris under the bus. And the media's turn on a dime was just absolutely astonishing because just a couple of weeks before Biden withdrew, there were stories appearing in the corporate media. She's the most unpopular vice president ever. People who work for her can't stand her because she's a horrible boss to work for. She's lazy. She doesn't do her research.
And now we've always said she's wonderful.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Exactly. We've always been at war with East Asia. So she appears at the head of a table in FEMA's offices for a photo op. Doesn't say anything. She's not leading the meeting. She didn't even say anything. Yeah. So they bring the cameras in, take pictures, take video. Okay. Now everybody leave the room. I mean, what a lousy job. You're working for FEMA and you've got a major crisis on your hands and you've got to drop everything so you can go sit in the conference room and pretend you're holding a meeting so Kamala Harris can get a photo op to help her election campaign.
Watch the head of FEMA take the fall because that happened in Katrina.
Yeah. Michael Brown. Yeah. Terrific job, Brownie, as Bush said.
Yeah.
So there was that. Then Harris appeared. I think it was in North Carolina. I'm not sure, but she was talking about how the federal government would make available to the victims of Helene $750. $750. That might replace one window on your home that's been flattened.
Now, mind you, most people would have insurance of some kind. If you're renting, you might not have renter's insurance. Not everyone gets that. So your personal belongings might not be covered. But, boy, I told you this a couple of days ago, watch insurance companies complain and then start to go under.
Yeah.
And gobble each other up.
That led to a bunch of changes after Katrina with people complaining about certain companies that were trying very hard not to pay out because they didn't have the financial reserves. We talked about this previously, by the way. This has already been affecting churches and religious church camps because of liability and these insurance companies not having sufficient cash reserves to cover claims. You've got adults and children in the same place, especially when you've got camps going on there. No statute of limitations. 20 years down the road, somebody comes back and says that person did something inappropriate. Mm-hmm. So a lot of churches are finding their premiums being jacked through the roof and coverage just dropped.
Yeah, well, that sounds like it makes sense financially if you are an insurance company owner. But I have to say, spiritually speaking, that is not a coincidence.
Oh, no, absolutely not. There's something else going on here. And, yeah. The other aspect of this response was when Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, this week said, we don't have enough money to last through the rest of the hurricane season. Like, really? Because FEMA has which is underneath Homeland Security, has a $30 billion annual budget.
But if you look at their website, they say right there on the website that a lot of their money has been going to help the travelers.
New arrivals.
We'll call them travelers.
Yeah.
New, and I say that intentionally.
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking about that topic, by the way, for the Skywatch TV virtual conference.
That'll be very interesting.
Travelers and the
Amorite sense, the Canaanite sense?
Well, and the land divided by rivers.
Oh. If you're not catching the reference, travelers is a term that you'll find in the dictionary of deities and demons in the Bible. It was a term applied to the spirits of the Rephaim.
Yeah, Avarim.
Yeah. So Mayorkas, and the FEMA's budget has been stretched somewhat. New York Post reported that they spent about $1.2 billion since the fall of 2022. So over the last 2 years, they're spending about $600 million a year feeding and housing illegal migrants. There are some who say, what about the prepaid debit cards? Oh, it's funny. Whenever you find the fact checkers out there, like PolitiFact, fact checking something, it's okay. Just whatever they say, it's probably the opposite. No, there's very clever language. No, we're not giving prepaid debit cards. PolitiFact rates this as false. No, what they're doing is they're sending money to non-government organizations and the NGOs are issuing.
Oh, of course.
The debit cards.
Yes.
So, City of New York, Mayor Eric Adams was giving out prepaid debit cards to the illegal migrants there. So,
I would recommend, Michelle Malkin had a book out some years ago that I read in preparation to help write a chapter for a Tom Horn, one of those sort of collective, everybody writes a chapter books.
Anthologies?
Yeah, anthologies, thank you. And I wanted to write about what was happening on the southern border with regards to the idea of travelers. And I read her book, and I highly recommend it. I don't have the title in front of me, but she gets into the nuts and bolts of why it is that people from South America can safely, quote unquote, cross a vast area. They don't have a map necessarily. They don't know where they're going, and yet they're helped along the way.
Right.
And that help often comes from NGOs. Seriously.
NGOs.
It's like rest areas.
And the United Nations.
Yeah, that's my point.
Right.
Highly recommend you read the book. I'll do a left turn here because we've watched things taking place in the Middle East. And of course, Biden's famous one word to Iran has been don't. Like, down.
Yeah.
No.
And Iran said, do.
Yeah, they did. They do, and they did. You have to look at the various countries and always think spiritually with regard to this massive game of spiritual warfare risk that's being played. Setting up, getting ready, everybody take your positions for the return of Messiah. Because they know it's coming.
Right.
There is a vast area that's about 2,000 miles from all the important spots in the Indian Ocean. It's called Diego Garcia.
Right.
It is part of the Chagos Archipelago. It's a series of atolls, which essentially are the peaks of an underwater series, a chain of mountains. And mountains being very important in spiritual activity.
Right.
And Diego Garcia was emptied out of all people. The Chagosians is what they're sometimes called, or the Chagos people, so that it could be occupied by the United States and the UK. And we being the US and the UK, have had this major military base on Diego Garcia, which is the biggest of these atolls.
Right. It's one of our 2 bomber bases in the Indo-Pacific, the other one being on the island of Guam.
Again, it's about 2,000 miles from all action in that area. Mm-hmm. That's easily done by a bomber. Why would Keir Starmer suddenly turn around and give the whole thing away with the idea that, oh, wait, we'll pay you so that we can still stay there? Mm-hmm. Now, I want to give you a little background on the Chagos people.
Okay.
They were actually brought there as slaves by France.
Okay.
In the 18th century. Mm-hmm. Because there were plantations of coconut groves. People falling out of coconut trees. Just suddenly had that picture. They were brought from Africa by the French and made workers, quote unquote, on this series of islands. And then in the 20th century, the U.S. and the U.K. decided, because at this point, the U.K. had won everything, England had won everything, post-Bonaparte, the 1814 Treaty of Paris, I think. Anyway, the treaty post-Napoleonic Wars. Great Britain got those islands as part of the deal. They had belonged to France. Great Britain decided with the UK, with the United States in, I think it was the 1940s, that they were going to sort of share. So by 1967 or so, Diego Garcia military base was built.
Yeah, 1965 is when the Chagos Islands were detached from Mauritius.
Well, Mauritius wants it back, and Keir Starmer said, okay.
Yeah. In the early 70s, Britain evicted 2,000 residents to the island of Mauritius and the Seychelles to make way for the airbase on Diego Garcia, which is then leased to the United States.
For 99 years.
Yeah, 1966. Non-binding resolution in the UN General Assembly in 2019 said Britain should give up control of the archipelago after wrongfully forcing the population to leave. In 2016, Britain's foreign ministry extended the lease until 2036 and declared the expelled islanders would not be allowed to go back. But now this is changing that. The expelled islanders will be allowed to go back. There are those who are upset about the relationship between Mauritius and China, which has close trade ties.
Exactly. And some of those Chagosians live in the UK. They have citizenship because it's been British.
Yeah.
And now what are they going to do? Where are they going to go? Do they have to leave?
Question. Well, here's the thing. They were not even included in these talks between Mauritius and the UK government.
And that's one reason they're so angry.
Right.
But my point is, from a strategic point of view, Keir Starmer is the worst prime minister in history.
And he's proven that just in the first few months of his term.
I know. He is the worst. He wants to get back into the EU. He wants to divest the UK of anything that has value. And he wants to encourage those boats to come on over because we got lots and lots of money.
Isn't it interesting, almost coincidental if we were coincidence theorists? That
which we're not.
Which we are not. The worst prime minister in the UK's history, and I would put Rishi Sunak as just slightly above Starmer, and the worst president in the history of the United States at the same time.
And now, the United States and the UK are the modern Rome in many ways.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the Greco-Roman Empire.
The empire that never ended. Yep.
Well, it's about to end.
Well, we'll continue that discussion, and we got a few other things to talk about.
We do?
Oh, yeah. Some journalists actually performing journalism, trying to find the 300,000 children that have gone missing under the Biden-Harris administration. What they found is really disturbing.
Careful with that. That'll get us canceled.
Yeah. Well, we'll be very delicate as how we discuss this when PID Radio continues. Our new book, The Gates of Hell, is available now, and we have a special offer on it at the Gilbert House store.
You know, you're not going to find a deal like this anywhere else. You're going to get the book, which is a $21.95 value. You're going to get 3 DVDs.
More than 12 hours of video content plus the book for just $45. That's half price.
That's half price because the whole package at retail is over $90.
The Gates of Hell tackles mysteries like where was Jesus baptized and why did he choose to get baptized in a place known as the Land of the Serpent?
Oh my goodness, you want this deal. This is the kind of thing that you can share with your friends, share with your pastor, read again, because trust me, the source information that Derek and I used for this, you're not going to find it anywhere else.
Right. It's not just an archaeological or historical curiosity. It is relevant to us today. Again, a special offer for the month of October only at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we just again want to remind you, download that app and enjoy all the stuff that's on there, or just be bored, But look, there's weeks worth of stuff on there. You can just drive yourself crazy, get some munchies, something to drink, and disappear for about a month, and just enjoy enjoy everything that's on there.
And that would be listening straight through 24/7.
I know, but I have to tell you, historically, there have been so many guests on PID Radio and VFTB that are no longer with us.
True.
So we've got a lot of archived, important stuff that we really encourage you to go in there and enjoy. The late Michael Heiser, the late Dr. Thomas Horn, the
late Chuck Missler, the
Chuck
late Russ
Missler.
Dizdar.
Yes, also David Flynn.
Rob Skiba.
Dave Duncan.
Chris Putnam. Yeah. And Noah Hutchings from one of the founders
what a sweetie.
of Southwest Radio Ministries. So a lot of that you'll find on the app, gilberthouse.org/app, pidradio.com/app. The benefit of the mobile app, because all of this content, video and audio, is available on the Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV versions, but on the app you've also got a Bible module with multiple translations, audio Bible if you choose to use it that way, calendar of our upcoming events, and the messaging section where you can throw questions at us, questions for Derek, questions for Sharon, or just pose them in the open forum.
Ask for prayer.
I need to add a new group in there for the Bible's Greatest Mysteries.
And for the Armored Sheep.
Armored Sheep, yes. We'll be doing that this weekend, and the Armored Sheep will debut this coming week. So,
also, anyway. Derek and I are both on Telegram. If you are interested in that, if you're on Telegram at all, we share a lot of news updates on there.
Yeah.
And many of them lately have been from Israel.
Yeah. Social media links are all in the notes below this program, whether you're watching or listening. If you're watching, you're just seeing a static image. So, if you're seeing something move, you really need to consult with your physician. But in the notes below, links to our Telegram channels, links to our social media accounts, X, Facebook, and so on. So all of that there at
a little video
pidradio.com. Little video, that'd be kind of cute.
Yeah.
A little GIF going back and forth. Glory laughing.
They are so funny.
So all of that there. We've got a couple of conferences to tell you about. We'll talk about those at the end of the program.
And also, by the way, while you're at gilberthouse.org, if you go there, and thank you for going there, you need to go there to download the app if you're so inclined. But also, /travel there, you will see all of the updates as to when we are going to Israel next. And at this point, it'll be March of next year.
Right. March 25th through April 3rd, the dates. Still need to consult with Lipkin Tours about travel over to Jordan right now. I
have a feeling that may not happen.
Yeah. We would love to go back over there because there's some wonderful things to see, especially at Petra. That is really a bucket list item. We've been blessed to see it 3 times now, but want to be sure everybody is safe. And I know the Lipkin Tours agrees. And if
there have been some things happening at that bridge.
Yeah,
so.
Allenby. So we'll talk a little bit about the situation in Israel, which has developed recent developments over the past few days. If it affects the tour next spring, if the situation is not secure and we need to reschedule, as we had to do during the lockdowns, Lipkin Tours, if you can't accommodate the new rescheduled dates, Lipkin Tours will refund your deposit. So there is no risk. If you put down a deposit and the dates change, they don't work for you, don't worry. You won't be held. Your money will not be kept.
And we had so many wonderful people that hung in there with us.
Oh, yeah.
And we ended up with 3 full buses.
Yeah. And with the guests we've got next spring, if the situation is secure, going with Tim Alberino, Doug Van Dorn, and Judd Burton. We
could end up with 4.
We very easily could.
Yep, I think so too.
Gilberthouse.org/travel. There's a website out there, and it seems that really serious investigative journalism is now being done by independent sites. They are doing what we used to think newspaper journalists, television investigative journalists were doing. Whether they were actually ever doing it, I don't know. But you've got sites like, James O'Keefe, who founded Project Veritas, and now he's got O'Keefe Media Group, which is, I think, a wonderful acronym, OMG. But other sites out there like Muckraker. There's a website, muckraker.com, which that's a term that used to be thrown as a pejorative at newspaper journalists. They're digging through the trash to find stuff to make us look bad.
Muck's an old word for something else.
Right. Yeah. I'm just trying to be...
We find in our yard a lot since we have 2 dogs.
Yeah. They began looking into, after the news came out that the government admits that it's lost track of some 300,000 children since January of 2021. These are unaccompanied minors, or UCs, unaccompanied children, who've entered into the country and then are supposed to be placed by the government with relatives or with responsible adults. But it has been documented that this program is placing children in the hands of criminal gangs like MS-13, who are operating inside the United States.
Well, here's the thing. If you have an adult that shows up and says, I'm his Uncle Pedro.
Yeah. And the government's like, okay, great. Here you go. We can cross another one off the list.
And the boy may be told by the coyote, the person bringing him in, when you get there, Pedro is going to meet you and he'll take care of you.
Right.
So when he says, I'm your Uncle Pedro, you say, yeah.
And this is horrible. Now, we don't have a frame of reference for what life is like in the home countries of the children who are coming here from places like Honduras, El Salvador, wherever. So maybe parents in good faith are sending them and praying that their children will be safe. On the other hand, it's also possible that they may be so financially strapped that they're being compensated in some way, which is horrible to think about, but it's not unknown.
Well, it gets back to Chagos and how those people got to those islands. The fact that they were taken from Africa and moved by the French. And this was not just France doing this. The Arabs did a lot of moving of people. We'll just put it that way.
Yes.
This is another way to have indentured servants.
Exactly.
In some ways, it's a way to accumulate pawns in your game.
It is a big business. This is one of the things that Skywatch TV has been dealing with. The forthcoming docu-series called Rescue Us, which is at the duplicators right now. So those programs will be airing leading up to, I think in the month of November, there'll be a series of programs on this. Joe Horn's presentation on this at the Go Therefore conference in July in Ohio was absolutely, he got a standing ovation. He had people in tears.
Yes, I just wept. He needed a box of Kleenex.
Right. The trafficking of children is bigger business than the drug trade. The gangs that are engaging in this are making more money at this than they are selling crack, cocaine, heroin, whatever. It is horrific to think about. And these journalists, God bless them, because this is the kind of thing, if you're going to start kicking at this hornet's nest, you may well get stung because you're threatening the flow of money to some very powerful, ruthless people with no sense of morals.
And this is why I want to do the talk about the travelers, the Avarim, because there's a spiritual aspect to this.
Yeah. This is a very ancient practice. You look back at the Amorites, and I'm convinced that this is connected to the iniquity or the sin of the Amorites.
So am I.
Yeah. Child sacrifice, well known in that culture. The practice of sacrificing children to Molech. In the 15th century BC, God told Moses, tell the Israelites, don't do this. Why would he do that? Because there were people in the land of Canaan who were doing this.
Yes.
And this continued into the Christian era. The Phoenicians, who were just the Amorites of a more recent age, continued this practice at Carthage, at sites on Sicily, Sardinia, southern Spain, wherever the wherever the Phoenicians, the descendants of the Canaanites and Amorites, settled, they continued this practice of sacrificing children.
Look, this is another reason you really need to download our app, because the ability for us to say what we need to say on these public platforms is about to sunset.
Yes.
For instance, on certain platforms, you cannot say words that imply you're unaliving someone.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's the word you have to use, unalive.
Yep. Other words that deal with unwanted physical contact.
Mm-hmm. You can't use those.
You can't use those. So, and this particular subject that we're touching on here today is why Skywatch TV got yanked off of a video sharing site 3 times.
Yes. And I'll tell you the other thing. Joe Horn has shared with us that he has been under major spiritual attack lately because of this.
Yes. And he's connected it to this particular subject. But these children that's why the docuseries is called Rescue Us. The journalists for Muckraker got a list of what they call the most vulnerable children on the list of unaccompanied children. They tried to track down where they'd been placed. And they focused on the youngest on the list because they're at the highest risk. And I'm going to quote from their article now. I will link to the article in the notes so that you can go read the entire piece yourself. And then they've got a video report that's accompanying this. This is just like a summary of what they put in their video report. We began our investigations by door knocking the addresses of the most vulnerable children on the list. One of our first finds was an abandoned house in Amityville, New York, interestingly.
Oh my gosh.
Where 2 boys aged 7 and 10 had allegedly been delivered. They got a picture of the house. The windows are boarded up. And this was where they delivered it. And
social services could have checked on that.
Right. Homeland Security. Why are you turning kids over to and delivering them to an abandoned house? It is unclear what happened to the boys who were delivered to the sponsor at this address. We were ultimately unable to locate them. Our investigation eventually led us to the projects of the Bronx, where we found a girl who told us a horror story from inside the facility she was detained at in Pomona, California. The girl pictured above, who we will call Alexa, was ultimately placed with a safe sponsor. However, she told us that while at a holding facility in Pomona, she encountered children who would cry because they were being sent to a sponsor who they did not know. Not a relative, not a family member. Alexa explained how children were awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning, taken from the holding facility to their sponsors without the opportunity to say goodbye to their friends. Alexa also told us about a friend of hers who was with her at the Pomona, California facility. Alexa and her friend had agreed to contact each other on Facebook once they were placed safely with their sponsors. Unfortunately, Alexa never heard from her friend again. It is unclear what the fate of her friend ultimately was. Here's the interesting thing, because this gets back to the Skywatch documentary, Silent Cry. The federal government uses contractors to move the children from detention centers like the one Alexa was held at into the hands of their sponsors. One of these contractors is MVM. MVM, a private security contractor with ties to the CIA, NSA, FBI, and Homeland Security.
Oh, no. Suddenly I'm thinking Finders.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going with it.
Oh, gosh.
The Finders. This is referenced in the opening scenes of the documentary Silent Cry. This information is openly available. The FBI published this a couple of years ago on its website.
We've talked about it on PID Radio a number of times.
Yeah, do a search through the PID Radio archives for Finders. This was a group that apparently was connected somehow to intelligence. The State Department told the Metropolitan Police in Washington, D.C. to stand down. As this was a group, a couple of men arrested in Tallahassee, Florida, with children who clearly were not theirs. The children were almost feral. They didn't know what a telephone, these were like 5, 6-year-old kids. We're taking them to a special school in Mexico for gifted children. When they found these guys, they traced them. They connected them to this group called the Finders, who had an office in a warehouse in Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police raided the place, found a lot of really disturbing stuff that I won't describe here, but essentially evidence that children were being ordered.
Yes.
I mean, ordered.
Like there was a catalog.
Right. And this was back in the 80s and 90s. So this was being done by telex and fax, not by, over the internet. And that evidence that these guys connected to the finders had been traveling to places like North Korea at a time when nobody from the United States outside of government could even get permission to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So very disturbing. So that's what this raised in my mind as well. MVM's work, continuing with the article, has included providing security at Guantanamo Bay, guarding CIA stations in Iraq, and conducting research for the FBI's high-value detainee research group, which is responsible for conducting interrogations of terrorists.
This sounds like Wackenhut.
Kind of does, doesn't it? And
did they change their name?
We need to do some more research into MVM. Over the past few years, MVM has secured contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars to escort detained alien children to their sponsors across America. The 3 states which have received the most unaccompanied children since 2021 are Texas, California, and Florida, with each state taking in over 10,000 per year. We learned that 2 illegal aliens from Guatemala, named Baltazar and Juana, had requested to sponsor 13 children across 5 different addresses in Bonita Springs, Florida. Even more concerning was that these same addresses were also being used by other illegal aliens who were attempting to sponsor children. At one particular 2-bedroom house, 13 again, children being sponsored by 4 different adults. Again, I'll put a link here because they've got a picture of this home in Bonita Springs, Florida. We were told that this trafficking case had been reported to HSI, that's Homeland Security Investigations, the FBI, and HHS, Health and Human Services. But after sitting on the case for years, none of these agencies made any progress. So anyway, there is a documentary that they produced below, Muckraker. Going to watch that later, but I will link to this article, which contains the link to the documentary in the notes. But yes, this is a subject that we talked about before many years. I mean, you're talking about the finders. You've got the Franklin credit union scandal.
You interviewed
yes, the author.
Writer.
Yeah. I'll put a link to that interview. The Franklin cover-up. Nick Bryant is the name of the author, if I remember correctly, but this goes back more than 10 years. But that Franklin Credit Union scandal, that was a company in
that goes
Omaha.
Back to the 80s.
Yeah, Omaha, Nebraska, run by a fellow named Lawrence King, an African-American who had ties at the highest levels of the Republican Party. He sang the national anthem to open one of the Republican National Conventions.
And all of that happened at about the same time that, the guy who has, I can see him and I can't think of his name, his son disappeared, was taken. And I think he may have been the first child that disappeared. It was in Nebraska. And you've seen him. He's got the crime show and you call in.
Walsh, John Walsh.
Yes, John Walsh, his son. Gosh, what is his son's name? I want to say Tommy, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's very disturbing, but
But I remember the story when the first little boy disappeared because I was living in Lincoln, Nebraska at the time.
Yeah. And then there was the Johnny Gosch case.
That's the name. Johnny Gosch. Isn't he? Let me look this up.
I don't think that was John Walsh's son. No, Johnny Gosch was a different case, but...
yeah, but I think he may have been... let me look that up.
Yeah, there was a story that came out during the George W. Bush administration that Gosch, under a different name, had somehow gotten White House press credentials. And he'd been missing for a long time at that point. There were some who thought that this reporter for an online news site had somehow gotten White House press credentials, and people were asking, how is that possible that he got... But this story, the Franklin Credit Union and some of the players involved in it, Lawrence King, Craig Spence.
Yeah, Gosch disappeared in 1982 from Des Moines.
Okay.
Which we got a lot of Des Moines news when I lived in Nebraska.
And this was a story we were following in the early 2000s.
Yes.
William H. Kennedy, the late Michael Corbin, but William H. Kennedy also has passed on. Michael Corbin, who hosted a program for a closer look out of Denver.
Oh yes,
he was investigating this as well.
Adam Walsh.
Adam, okay. The Johnny Gosch story was.
Oh my gosh, his little boy was abducted from Florida. I'd forgotten that. And he was found unalived.
Yeah.
Sadly.
The story of the Franklin cover-up, again, this was going back almost 40 years now, but it just shows that this is a very disturbing aspect of the underbelly of our society, not just American society, but global society, the abuse and use of children in service of these dark entities, these fallen Elohim.
Yes, you have to look at the spiritual aspects because this is an old practice. It's just done differently now.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. This is the kind of thing that God was telling Moses, the Israelites are not to do these things. Leviticus chapter 18. Very aberrant, deviant, abominable, and I use that word deliberately, as in abomination type of practices that the Canaanites were engaging in, which is why God at the end of Leviticus 18 says, this is why the land is vomiting them out. Don't do these things lest the land vomit you out, as it is the inhabitants who are being pushed out of your way. This is continuing to this day. I mean, we're almost 3,500 years after God told Moses to tell the Israelites, don't do these things, and these things are still going on. There were some very bizarre stories that came out. The Washington Times reported back in the early 80s that during the George H.W. Bush, mid-80s, during the George H.W. Bush administration, Craig Spence, who ran an escort service where young men were provided to older men, took a group of young men on a tour of the White House.
Oh, yes. Yes, I remember that.
At night.
Yes. Yeah.
This was during a Republican administration, so this crosses party lines. This is not something you can put on one party or the other. They're
all the same party.
It is the uniparty, right? Yep. And I think that's why they're so upset at, not just Trump now, but also Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And Tulsi Gabbard and others who are who have been long-time Democrats.
You're not singing from the hymn sheet.
Exactly. You've gone rogue. You're trying to crash our party. And behind the uniparty is a spirit, or spirits plural. As you say, we are the modern day Rome, and there's a lot of evidence to that. I mean, even the U.S. Capitol is named for the temple of Jupiter.
Yeah, that's why
Jesus identified as the Capitolium. Yeah, who Jesus identified the storm god Jupiter, Zeus, Baal as Satan. So this is Satan is the god of this world.
Yes,
he's in temporary control, and so we see dark things happening like this, like the people of Appalachia who are being abandoned by the federal government. And there's some who suggest, well, this is to return those areas to the land so they will all be moved into our 15-minute cities. I don't know if that's openly part of the plan. If the government is just incompetent and not doing this deliberately, either way, it's still wrong.
It is so wrong. Boy. Let's just go to Israel for a minute before we close, because we need to recap what's been going on. Today, Israel announced that Yoav Gallant announced that there would be what is being described as serious and significant response to Iranian ballistic missile attack from Tuesday. It's been relatively quiet, other than the IDF going directly, boots on the ground, but also in the air, into Hezbollah and taking out the leaders very strategically. Yes.
Not only have they taken out the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, they took out the Shura Council, SHURA, which was meeting to confirm his successor.
Elect the next pope.
Yeah. The Mossad has an account on X where they are pretty snarky, and it's dark humor, but they said they posted a few days ago that electing the successor to Nasrallah will be like electing the Pope. As soon as they announce his name, you'll see a pillar of smoke over Beirut.
Yeah, and it's not the white smoke that says, hey, we've got one. It's IDF saying, hey, we got another one.
Exactly, because they took out his successor, and now they've taken out the successor to the successor, a guy named Hashem Safiaddin. I think that's as close as I can get to it.
Took out his brother, too.
He was expected to succeed Nasrallah. And they also the head of Hezbollah's intelligence directorate. So this is why Ayatollah Khamenei in Tehran is in a secure, hidden location, because they're afraid the IDF is going to get him. This is, I mean, in the span of a couple of months, Israel has taken out the leadership of Hezbollah, the leadership of Hamas, significant number of fighters for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It doesn't mean the war is over. Israel is now got troops on the ground in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese army, which is not Hezbollah, it's the government, but the government is dominated by Hezbollah. The army is pulled back from the border because they don't want to engage with the IDF.
Right.
Hezbollah's fighters are engaging, and some pretty fierce fighting is taking place in those villages in southern Lebanon. The terrain there is not like in Gaza, where it's flat and sandy. It's mountainous. It is very difficult. But the Israelis are going in and clearing out Hezbollah strongholds from the villages, Lebanese villages on their side of the border. And according to reports, they're finding just in it an astonishing amount of weapons. According to what I read earlier this week, it appeared that Hezbollah was preparing to invade northern Israel, the Galilee, and the Golan Heights when Hamas attacked. But Hamas, as you said last week, that Hamas jumped the gun. Yes. And Hezbollah was not yet ready.
It was supposed to be a coordinated attack from all sides.
Right. And Hamas they saw the couple thousand kids there at the music festival, and they just couldn't resist that soft target, so they went in. Hezbollah wasn't ready. And although we didn't know about it until this past week, the IDF started sending commandos across the border to take out the staging areas that Hezbollah was going to use. So they prevented what was going to happen to the villages and the towns on the northern part of Israel, which a year into this war now, as we approach the first anniversary, that'll be coming up on Monday of this war. You got 60,000 people in the north of Israel, the Upper Galilee, who
have no home.
Have no home. Yeah, they're living in temporary housing with relatives, friends, or staying in hotels. And God bless them. It appears that Benjamin Netanyahu, who may not survive this event when Israel gets back to normal, although his poll numbers have surged since they took out Nasrallah.
Absolutely. He is much more popular now than before, and that wasn't the intention.
No.
But I think most Israelis are looking at that and thinking, I'm really glad there's a strong leader up there right now.
Yeah, and not somebody who's saying we need to make a peace deal at any cost.
Exactly.
It appears that Netanyahu is trying to leave a legacy, and that his legacy is securing Israel against its foes, its enemies on its borders.
If only we had a president who wanted to do that. We had one a few years ago who wanted to secure our borders.
Right. Well, I think the things that have happened here over the last 3 years, and stories like this, the report in Muckraker, and the terrible tragedy that's unfolding in Appalachia, I think people will look at this and say, we just cannot. In the words of Governor Tim Walz, Democratic vice presidential candidate, we can't have another 4 years of this. We can't take 4 more years of this.
Tim Walz. Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started on the various talking points and sound bites that, that man. Anyway, we won't go there.
No, we won't. Israel, we talked about the Israel tour conference coming up this weekend. Of course, is the Inspiring Women's webinar.
It's going on right now.
Going on right now at hearthewatchmen.com. If you're not signed up, still not too late to take advantage of it. And tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m. Central Time, that's UTC -5, Sharon will be available for your questions in real time.
Yeah. And I may not wear makeup for that either.
Wear a GHTV cap, though, which is available now at the Gilbert House store, gilberthouse.org/store.
That's a great idea. And I could wear a Red Wing Saga t-shirt.
There you go. Get a Red Wing Saga t-shirt and have some water handy in your GHTV mug or a PID radio mug.
And the dogs may even be with me.
I'm sure they will.
And Derek will be sitting there too, by the way.
I'll be off camera.
Running things.
Yeah, well, here, click here. Okay, I'm done.
By the way, speaking of questions, before we get to that, though, before we get to your questions, There is also a conference coming up in Branson, Missouri. First weekend in December, and Derek is speaking.
December 5th through 8th at the Chateau on the Lake. Beautiful hotel overlooking Table Rock Lake, a beautiful setting in the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. When we say beautiful Missouri Ozarks, it's not just a phrase. It is the truth. We are truly blessed.
Beautiful. They look like the Appalachians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not as high.
No, but just as pretty.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Wonderful speakers like L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salas, Ken Johnson, Josh Peck, Mondo Gonzalez, Gary Stearman will be there. Many others, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, Patrick Wood, looking forward to meeting him in person. Doug Hershey, we're going to talk to him about getting over to Turkey.
Yeah, I know.
So
Turkey.
Many, many wonderful speakers. Typical Prophecy Watchers Conference. They bring together the best. So I'm honored to have been asked by Bob Ulrich to speak. The hotel itself is booked solid for the weekend, but there are plenty of other hotels in the Branson area that are close by, just a few minutes away. So sign up at BransonChristmasProphecyConference.com. You can follow a link from our app, from our website, and we hope to see you there. So, question, got one from Ginger.
Hi, Ginger.
And this was addressed to you. Sharon, I've been following you for quite some time. I enjoy your content. My question is in Genesis. Genesis 12:3 says, God says to Abram, I will bless those who bless you. Through you, all the earth will be blessed. I was reading the Septuagint. It says, in you, all will be blessed. Question, what do you think it means in you that is so different from through you?
Well, I think it works both ways. It's the idea that he's becoming the father of the future. The that it was added to his name is like the breath of God.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading that just a couple of days ago.
Yeah. The ESV renders it, in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed.
Mm-hmm.
The Net Bible, New English Translation, renders it, all the families of the earth will bless one another by your name.
This is because his descendant would be Yeshua.
Yeah. The translator's notes get into a lot of language geek stuff, explaining why they rendered it this way. The Septuagint, let me go to the Septuagint here. Genesis 12:3.
By the way, Sarah's name also had a added to it.
True, yeah. It was Sarai, and then it became Sarah.
So it's like at that point, you could even make the argument that the Lord breathed something special into their DNA at that point.
Interesting thought. The Septuagint, I'm looking at two different Septuagint translations, both the Brenton and the Lexham, which is the modern English translation, and both of those render it, in you, all the tribes of the earth will be blessed. In thee shall all the tribes of the earth be blessed. So I guess it depends on your translation, but through you may be a King James translation.
Well, bottom line, Messiah.
Yeah.
He was chosen, and the Lord set it up. And the Lord was saying to the fallen realm, look, you guys have accepted worship from human beings. You are running the world underneath the king of the world, Satan. And I am going to fulfill the promise that I made back in the garden. I'm going to do it right here. And I'm sure that they all looked and said, hold on. He's just staked out the Mount of Assembly. He's just staked out Jerusalem. What's going on here? We've got to get in there and take it away from him.
Yeah. So good question, Ginger. Thank you for that.
But very good.
It just shows the work that translators have to do. Do we choose in you or through you? And the translations we look at most often, the ESV and the NET, use in you, the Septuagint saying in you as well. I'd have to look to see which translations use through you. We, in our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, will often look at verses and see that the translations differ quite a lot because, especially when you get into some of the archaic Hebrew and archaic Greek, there's not a lot of context for some of the words that are used, and it can be very difficult to decide how to render that into English. And so that's why when
Carl Gallups, we need you on this.
When we say that the Bible is the Word of God, inerrant in the original languages, because when you're translating to another language, sometimes there aren't precise words that mean exactly in English what the Greek or the Hebrew or the Aramaic mean. And sometimes the word that we're looking at in Hebrew is a loan word from Egyptian or Akkadian or Greek. So
that's why I love the Septuagint, because the Septuagint translators had context.
Yeah.
Much closer to the original than you and I are.
Mm-hmm.
So what did they choose?
Right. They understood. They understood the Jewish mindset, the Jewish religious understanding of their text, the Old Testament. And this was a couple hundred years before Jesus. So there were no changes or tweaks to de-emphasize the existence of other entities in the spirit realm that Christians could then say, yeah, we know who the angel of Yahweh is. Mm-hmm. That was Yeshua. Oh. No. So
the Masoretes had to.
Yeah, they tweaked that just a little bit. Well, anyway, tomorrow morning, our Bible study, and then tomorrow evening, a view from the bunker.
And tomorrow morning, we're going to be celebrating communion, which we welcome you to join us as we do that. Also, we'll answer another question or two.
Yes, we will. So until then, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for grace and glory, Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.